Hey guys.
Welcome. Welcome to the United States of America. It is such an honor for us to receive you here today. This is the land of the free, and we know that all of you have faced... I'm Chris Landau. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm the Deputy Secretary of State of the United States. This is my friend Troy Edgar.
Yeah, I'm the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security. And again, welcome. It's so great to have you guys here.
I know you've gone through a long flight. I cannot believe there are babies and children who are actually so well behaved. This is much better than mine are. So bless you for that. And you know, I think it makes me so happy to see you with our flag in your hands, and that flag symbolizes liberty for so many of us. Many of us, our families have had a journey not that different from the journey that you are embarking on today. My own father was born in Europe and had to leave his country when Hitler came in the 1930s, and made his way to South America first and then eventually to the United States. So he is an immigrant who actually, was able to benefit from the many blessings of this country. And one of the reasons that I really wanted to go and work for the government is because I wanted to give back to this country that really brought freedom to my family and allowed us to escape a very difficult situation in another country. So, I know that this is going to be, any adjustment in life, any change takes a while to get used to. But I want you all to know that you are really welcome here and that we respect what you have had to deal with these last few years. We respect the long tradition of your people and what you have accomplished over the years. And I am sure that you will be successful. As you know, a lot of you, I think, are farmers, right? When you have quality seeds, you can put them in foreign soil and they will blossom, they will bloom. And we are excited to welcome you here to our country where we think you will bloom, and we will hopefully allow you to have fulfilling lives for your children, and then we will bloom and we will benefit alongside you. So thank you very much for coming here.
Yeah.
All right, Shalom. Giving all honor, all praise, and all glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Arachak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone that rule well. And as always, peace, blessings, and salutations to the hopeful elect tabernacle of David scattered abroad across the four winds of the earth. So what you're seeing is these so-called white South African migrants, who was given refugee status or asylum to be able to come to Babylon to become citizens. And I'm pretty sure they're gonna be well taken care of because white privilege is still a thing in Babylon. I'm pretty sure in the back of that dude's mind, he's saying to himself, better them than welcoming some niggas, because he wouldn't have had all that to say if these were, Haitian refugees. If these were, south of the border refugees, where Trump had to send, security down there. So you see the different approach, to get this kind-hearted, warm welcoming into the country. Whereas if it was Jake that was coming to the country, they get sent back around. They get separated from their families. They get thrown in detention centers, get it treated inhumane. So this devil, he's truly showing himself in these last days. And what a way to try to paint this picture. Like, these are people that are escaping, such evil oppression, from another group of people that seem to be pulling the strings and have the power and the authority in their own country to, oppressed these people. When we all know the true history of South Africa, how the Dutch came in and colonized, no different than how the British went around and colonized, here in the States, how they colonized Australia, different other parts of the world. And the scriptures tell you that, this man, he never keeps at home. This is why he's everywhere except, where he truly belongs. Habakkuk 2 and verse 5, and it says, yeah, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. All right. He's the biggest refugee. He's the biggest traveler, immigrant the earth has ever seen. But then he gets to dictate, where, who can stay where, the treatment that they can be given. And, what's really interesting, and I'm going to get into it briefly, this tune that they're having about these so-called white Germans, because that's basically what they go back to. All right. These were Edomite, they're descendants of German Edomites, all right, of the Dutch who came down and conquered South Africa. And then you had the apartheid situation going on. All right. And them South Africans down there, which I believe a good number of them are Jake, they actually were the ones being oppressed. They was dealing with societal and systematic oppression and racism. Okay. And Jake got fed up over the years, and they started rising up against those Edomite farmers. Okay. But now this is a way for them to paint these people as victims of racism and oppression. So you see how Esau likes to flip things. All right. He wants to get rid of the idea that Jake has suffered oppression and terrorism and racism in this country. And now he's trying to paint this narrative that, the Edomites, now somehow they're the victim now. When Jake starts to rise back up, when Jake retaliates, when Jake defend themselves from these devils, all of a sudden they become the victim. And, we're the ones that, we need to be policed. They need to be protected, from Jake. Yeah, Jake, a lot of our people, they're wicked, but a lot of their behavior, it stems from the trauma, the hatred that they received. And they channel that same energy towards themselves. Jake is more evil towards their own than they are against the enemy. But if Jake happened to defend himself and have the audacity to, deal with an Edomite that's, being evil towards him, then the whole nation needs to know that, these people are animals. We tired of them, yelling racism when they're the ones that are being racist. They're the ones that's doing this and doing that. So here it is, we'll bring in some extra Edomites, to help deal with our declining population, because this is what they refuse to harp on, but it is a fact now that their population is declining among the Edomites. They're dying more than they're producing. All right, their women are not producing at the rate that they supposed to. All right, a lot of them are infertile. The men. You know what I'm saying? Low sperm counts, and that's of course due to the diet. There's a lot of the radiation. It's different factors that play into it, but that's his own fault. He created the environment and the climate. So he can't stay at home. So, they figure they can go anywhere in the world, where there's other populations of them, and where they go, even though they're on lands of other people that dwelt there, that settled there before them, they'll treat them like trash in their own land, their own territory. That's how they were treating them South Africans. Okay? Who in large of his desire as held and is as deaf and cannot be satisfied, but gather unto him all nations and heap to him all people. All right, and people everywhere are sick and tired of him because he didn't colonized damn near the whole world, and taking up their resources. Shall not all these take up a parable against them and a taunting proverb against them and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long unto him that ladeth himself with thick clay? Then them Jake down there in South Africa, they started rising up against them. Now this is some things that they won't show you about what would be going on over there. It's no different than what's happened over here. Esau's the same no matter where he's at in the world. He's still the same devil. Whether he's the German devil, whether he's the British devil, whether he's the Spanish devil. So let me show this real quick.
There were tears on both sides of the courtroom.
This is from 7 years ago. There's some situation that happened, 7 years ago down in South Africa. But these people are the victim, right? Let's watch. This is only a minute and 44 seconds.
In the so-called coffin case. It was a case that laid bare the ongoing racial divide in post-apartheid South Africa. On Friday, a judge sentenced Theo Jackson to 14 years and Willem Oosthuizen to 11 years in prison.
The most appalling act by the accused was to put a living person in a coffin against his will under threats of...
So you see that they even have that white supremacist mindset everywhere, even down in South Africa, man. Treating them like peasants, even though they've always dwelt down there in that landmass. And Esau, that race, that scientific racism, and them thinking that they have racial superiority over others. That mentality is prevalent everywhere they're at in the world, which is why they feel entitled that they can come to your land, all right, stake claim to the resources of the land that you dwell, and that they get to have the authority to rule over you and direct you to land that they see fit for you while they take over and rule. That's how they always been. They look down upon you. They don't think that you're capable of governing yourselves. You have a low IQ. You're not civil. You're not intelligent enough to, be able to, live on land and, be self-sufficient. So they always felt like, they're deserving of that position no matter where they're at, because that racist mindset. And so they come into your territory, all right, and then you have these type of things going on. Relegate you to, the lower quality parts of the land, leave you with nothing, and they have the better end of the land mass. Then they segregate. You stay over there, and we gonna be over here. We gonna have the good part. You stay over there, and you can, have that part, have that side. But this isn't your native land. You didn't originate over here. But this is what goes on.
Killing him.
Video shot by the men on a mobile phone led to nationwide condemnation and eventually their arrests. Victor Maloshwa says
they were forcing these dudes to basically get in them coffins so that they can bury them alive. This is what they did.
taking a shortcut on the men's farm when they kidnapped him, drove him to another location, forced him into a coffin, and threatened to kill him. In their defense, the farmers say Maloshwa was trespassing. They caught him stealing copper cables and said he threatened to kill their families and burn their crops. But the judge pointed out this was not the first time the men had forced someone into a coffin, and their behavior had, quote, fueled racial tensions. Analysts say this case spotlights the haves and the have-nots in South Africa, which is largely split along racial lines.
We're having to come to terms.
See, everywhere he's at, is the same dynamic. It's the same thing. But yet, it's everybody's problem, but him. He's not the problem. Everybody else is the problem. And this devil, the audacity, man, the nerve. And this is why, he suffers pushback everywhere he's at. Let's go to Obadiah. So now they're going to come to America with that same mindset because the Edomites that are already over here have that same mindset. They're all the same. Obadiah verse 2, it says, "Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised." You're not despised just for no reason. These nations didn't just out of nowhere develop this, this hatred. All right, out of nowhere, out of the thin blue air. That didn't come by itself. You devils have a long history. The scriptures say, "Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness." Though he go crouching and humbling himself, and that's what they're trying to do now. They're trying to humble themselves and play humanitarian and act like they're against racism, like they're above it all. This is you devils' long history, and you've never changed. Second, it's like it's Sirach 12. And 10, "Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him, and thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust have not been altogether wiped away." And that's him. His nature will never change. He is who he's always been. He's known for removing landmarks, taking lands by violence, like it says in Micah. They covet fields and take them by violence. They'll oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage. This is what they've been doing since they came out of the bottomless pit. Okay. And like I said, it's interesting because these, a lot of those farmers go back to the Dutch, going back to Germany. And prior to these Edomites ruling, you had a lot of Moors that ruled in these different parts of Europe, which we already noticed, the so-called Dark Ages. And I remember there was a documentary that was coming out about how the Swedes were dark-skinned people. Some of them were dark-skinned with blue eyes, but these were descendants of, the Moors. And here in America, in the 1700s, so you had Benjamin Franklin. He wrote an essay, and it was called "Observations Concerning the Increase of Mankind," 1751. And his observance was that he felt like the population of the so-called European, the Edomite European, is dwindling, and it's being filled with more people of color than so-called Caucasian people. So that was their concern even back then. And that's their same concern even to this very day. And I think this is part of the reason why they're allowing refugees from these European countries or so-called white immigrants into the country, because they need to start refilling the population that's actually declining, which is these Edomites, they're on the decline. Their numbers are getting smaller. It's becoming majority filled with what they call the minority. All right, Jake, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and natives. And this was a thing that we had going back to the captivity in ancient Egypt, where the Egyptians, they saw that we were multiplying. Let me grab that real quick. And they didn't want us to multiply because they saw that we was going to become more mightier in their own territory. Exodus 1:6, it says, and Joseph died, and all his brethren and all that generation, and the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph, and this is where the oppression started. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. In other words, they're now the majority. They came in as the minority, but now they've become the majority. And these Edomites, they're getting the same feeling here in Babylon. So why not welcome those farmers, those Edomite farmers from South Africa? Why not welcome those Ukrainians, or that's seeking asylum? So they're gonna do this while they're basically deporting and getting rid of, you tribes. Trump wants to open Alcatraz. He wants to, bind you up, lock you away, put you in a prison, or he wants to banish you out of the country. That's aimed towards you tribes, you blacks and Hispanics, and he was even considering some of the Gadites who are already over here. How are they immigrants in their own land? This man is the devil, man. It says, come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies. And they definitely don't want Judah and Israel to come together. They never meant for that to happen. But right now, the Lord is stirring up that spirit in Judah right now. Scriptures talk about who shall rouse him up, because thou art a lion's whelp, and he go crouching down, as that old lion. But who shall rouse him up as that young lion? The Lord's putting that he's in the midst of rousing that spirit back up in Jake, because Jake is fed up. So yeah, man, that Jake that was in the that got revenge on one of those deputies, because one of their officers murdered his son. That dude, the look on his face, and you could tell them devils, they hated every bit of that, man. This nigga is bold. This nigga is super courageous. He has no remorse for what he did. And there's gonna be more like that, man. Judah's gonna become a terror to Egypt. So them South Africans, they better not come over here and think that the way they treat them Jakes down there in South Africa, that Jake is Jake ain't gonna go for that. They don't care who you are, what country you coming from. You coming over here with that same racist, white supremacist mindset, and you try Jake over here, you're gonna get a different experience. Because Jake over here, man, they tired, man. Anyway, it says they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. And that's when they start to put, more hell on us and forced us to work in captivity. But it said the more they afflicted us, the more we multiplied and grew. Jake, they known for just popping out children, even in the worst conditions. No resources, being afflicted, and Jake still, get to working and popping out more children, and we multiply. So that same scare, that same concern is happening with these Edomites. All right. So when you go to this essay, the elders and bishops then brought this out. He goes into that concern. All right, this increased population of people, these dark complected people that are coming over here. All right. Now let me jump down. I want to go to like the end of it because it's a long read. But it's interesting because back then, they wouldn't have had this same energy, because the people that was coming, the so-called Germans that was coming over here, they knew that those Germans were actually, a lot of them were Jake, descendants of the Morenos, the Moors. Okay. This is I'm gonna start right here. And it says, and since detachments of English from Britain sent to America will have their places at home soon, supplied and increased so largely here, why should the Palladian Boers be suffered to swarm into our settlements, and by herding together establish their language and manners to the exclusion of ours? Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of our Anglifying them? Because we know that the British were straight up Edomites, all right? Even though they're not the original people of England, because that word Anglo-Saxon means angelic sons of Isaac. They're not the angelic sons of Isaac, not the chosen ones. All right, they're the Edomites, man, and they were rejected. But he's talking about the British. It says, and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion, which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people, which they were Edomites, they didn't start calling themselves white until 1681, right? It says, in the world is proportionably very small. All Africa is black or tawny, Asia chiefly tawny, America exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so, and in Europe the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, and we know swarthy means dark skinned. All right, dark colored, dark skinned, dark complected, dusky, tan, black. Okay. The opposite of what they call fair skin. It says, as are the Germans also. So they're not keeping that same energy now, right? Because you got, the Edomites, all right, that then, colonized. And now you got South Africans that happen to be descendants of the Dutch, going back to the Germans. And they're welcoming them with arms open. A very warm-hearted welcoming. And they're going to be taken care of. But back then, this wouldn't have went down like that. And when they keep it purely so-called white. It says the Saxons only accepted who with the English make the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. I could wish their numbers were increased. And while we are, I may call it, scoring our planet by clearing America of woods, and so making this side of our globe reflect a brighter light to the eyes of inhabitants in Mars or Venus, why should we, in the sight of the superior beings, darken its people? See that? And yeah, this is, of course, racist. So this was a concern back then. You don't think that is even much more now? So this is why they're more accepting of so-called white immigrants or refugees. We need to, increase our population, regardless of which European country they're coming from. There's too many niggas and Hispanics here. This is part of making America great in their eyes. So right now, we gotta increase our population. We tired of the niggas. We're suffering black fatigue. We're tired of them, screaming races and playing victim. We're the victims. So they're switching the narrative now. And that's why the scriptures say, the devil is going to come down with having great wrath because he knoweth that he have but a short time. All right. So this is what's going on right now. Why they're letting these people into the country. Okay. So, yeah, man. This devil, he has the audacity, man. But eventually, his kingdom is crumbling. All right, because them devils that's coming over here, they're gonna see and get the witness and even go through the experience of the fall of Babylon. They're thinking that they're gonna come over here and they're gonna, have a start of a new life and everything's gonna go good. Yeah, maybe temporarily, but all in all, like the scriptures say, we will have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Let every man, flee into his own country, because the judgments is finna be great here. But hey, let them devils come, because they finna come over here and they finna basically catch judgment. That's the only reason why the Lord would have you brought over here, so that you can get judged. It's finna go down. This place is over with. Babylon is gonna fall. All right. And you, Jake, y'all starting to see it in real time, how this devil truly feels about you. Okay. So anyway, hopefully y'all were edified. I'm gonna give all honor, praise, and glory to Yahweh Shai. To the next lesson. Shalom.